This sketch might look simple, but turning it into a real garment is where most brands would get stuck. The good news is you don't need to know pattern making to create an actual viable sample. I'll show you exactly how to go from sketch to a working sample with no pattern making whatsoever. The difference between bad and good sampling is really just clarity, communication, and consistency. You don't need to be a pattern maker to get a viable, working, good sample. Understanding the process and following a few of my key best practices can make all the difference. Let's differentiate between the sketch, the tech pack, and the spec. So a sketch alone doesn't create a viable sample. A sketch should always communicate design intent, and what that includes is silhouette, proportion, and key details. A tech pack is there to translate the sketch into actionable instructions for your manufacturing partner. A sketch plus a tech pack work together to create a viable sample. And specifically within the tech pack, there is the spec, which is the measurement of your style and all of the points of measurement that go together to create the measurements of your style, and usually the grading. For your sketch, you're going to want to use a clean, flat, technical sketch. You never want to use a fashion illustration. Your sketch should always be proportioned correctly, include design details, all seams, and all trims. And just so you know, fabric design like print is not required for a technical sketch. So just to be clear, tech packs are not patterns. They are communication tools for your manufacturing partners. And within your tech pack and your spec, it should include your base size, right? So your base size for what you want your sample to be. Let's say your style is extra small through extra large. Well, your base size would maybe be a medium if that's what you're requesting your first sample size to be. So your base size is the size you develop first, and then you develop the grading from. So it's the base size, all the key measurements or the points of measurement, that's what we call them, and your grading. And grading is optional, but I'll talk more about this later, but I do recommend doing your grading initially before you send your sketch and your tech pack, because this is going to give you a lot more control of the garment, how it comes out, and also the pricing. You also want to include your construction notes and your fabric and trim details in the tech pack. Let's get some clarity around grading, and if you need it, if you don't, what are some best practices that I recommend? So you don't need grading to get a sample, but understanding and providing grading gives you more control on how your garment turns out. So designers can grade themselves either in the initial sampling tech pack and update later if something doesn't come out right, or they can do the grading after the base sample is approved. Or you can ask your manufacturing partner to grade for you, but just keep in mind this isn't the best practice unless you have a very high trust level and good relationship with your manufacturing partner. So if you do decide to include grading in your tech pack or for your initial sample request, I would always request at least 2 size ranges so that you can see how your grading is executing on a sample level. So if you include grading and your garment, once again, for example, is extra small through extra large, you're going to grade all the sizes in your initial tech pack, and you're going to request a sample. I would request like medium and a large, or a small and a large, or an extra small and a medium. Something like that, where you can see, even if it's not the next size range, you can see how the grading executes in various size ranges. Leaving grading to the manufacturing partner reduces control unless there's a deep experience and trust level that you have with them. Also, grading can impact cost. So my recommendation is to include it in the initial tech pack, and then you can always tweak it after seeing your samples if there's something that you need to change. Let's talk about what your first sample is for and what it's not for. So your first sample is for fit, it's for proportion, and it's for construction. Your first sample should always Use the correct fabric quality and fabric weight, or as close as possible. Your first sample is usually not for final color, for print, or for perfect finishing. So remember, if you don't request your manufacturer to use the correct fabric and weight in your first sample, the garment might drape differently and it might fit differently, and all sorts of things could be off if you are actually getting a sample in one fabric and then doing production in a different fabric. So always try to get the fabric to be the same as you would do in production, or as close as possible. Now I'm going to give some tips on how to give clear sample feedback to your manufacturer. First and foremost, all feedback should be specific and measurable. It should never be emotional. For example, it shouldn't be, I don't like that. I don't like the way that looks. It should always be measurable and specific. And all changes should be updated in your tech pack. So you never want to write sample comments in an email and then not update your tech pack. You want your tech pack to sort of be the true north of where your garment is started, its iterations, your comments, and where it's headed. Like the ultimate destination would be production, right? So you want to see where it started, the comments, and then you want ultimately to have a production spec that's based off that. So the tech pack should be the true north of your garment, and all comments should be within the tech pack. When you receive your sample back from your manufacturing partner, you want to prioritize number one, measuring each point of measurement. And what I recommend to do is take the sample, find a flat surface like a table, or I use the floor a lot, and you want to lay it flat and measure each point of measurement on the spec. You want to look at what the initial spec measurement was, and then you want to write down what your sample garment measurement is. Where do they align? Where are they the same? Where are they different? And then what needs to be tweaked or changed within that, and any comments you have. So you want to compare your initial spec measurement, the point of measurement, and the sample measurement. Next, you want to look at the garment construction. Really, the garment construction is how the garment is made, how it's sewn. You want to look at seams. You want to look at all the details and see, like, is it good? Is it bad? What are my comments? What do I want to change? And then you want to look at the fabric and trim details. Did they use the right fabric? Did they use the right trims? Are they missing anything? All of that. So you want to make all of those comments within your tech pack. You also want to review graded sample sizes side by side. So if you ended up grading and you get two samples, then you want to look at them side by side and compare. Like even if it's not a small and a medium, let's say it's a small and a large, you want to measure both of the samples, put down what they measure and compare. Like, did it match your spec? Is the grading good? All of that. So you want to just really make sure you review your grading in detail and where it needs to be tweaked and changed. So you always want to send your comments in a clear and concise way. And I always recommend, like I said, within the tech pack, and create a comment section. So it's clear, it's in there, and they can see everything in one place. You want to request their confirmation and their understanding of your comments. So once you send the comments, ask them to review and let you know if they have any questions and or require more clarity about what your comments were. Lastly, you want to establish how to proceed with the sample. Is the sample approved as is? Is the sample correct and proceed to production? Is it not approved and requiring a second sample? You always want to be clear as to what the next step is for the sample. Sometimes it could be making comments and holding until you know if you're proceeding to production or what you're going to do. But you always want to be clear about what the next steps of the sample are. I want to make a quick note too about costing and sampling. What I have been doing for 10 years and what works for me is I do my flat sketch along with my tech pack and the spec, and I request a first cost or an FOB from that. Now, a lot of times your manufacturer will take that tech pack and the sketch, they're going to create an initial pattern from that, and then they're going to be able to provide you with costing. They're going to make you, that's why you need to tell them what size, right? Like your base size for your sample, because they're going to make the pattern based on your sample size, and then they can give you the cost, the initial first cost of the garment. And sampling costs, and this is very standard in the industry, is sampling costs are typically 1.5 to 2 times your FOB cost. And mainly that's because they're making the pattern, but they also have to create a sample for themselves. So they're going to send one to you, and then they're going to keep one for themselves so that they know when you're making comments, they can see what you're commenting on. Just keep in mind, if your first cost or the FOB pricing doesn't work, then the sampling might not be viable and you might not want to proceed. Like if the costing or the pricing doesn't work, what is the reason to get a sample, right? And there might be a reason to get a sample. Everyone's brand is different. It just might be something maybe you can't afford now, but you love and you want to develop it and maybe put it into production later. But just keep in mind the pricing usually has to work for most brands in order to proceed. Just to recap, what I want you to take away from this video is the sketch to sample is really about clarity, communication, and consistency. You don't need to be a pattern maker or a master pattern maker in order to get a great sample. You just need to be organized, consistent, clear, and really follow a little bit of a process so that your manufacturer is clear on what you want and not confused. Also, samples are a lot of times for creativity, for refinement, but not always for perfection. The sample doesn't always have to be exactly the way your production is going to be in order to be approved. You can correct and proceed. So it's not always for perfection, but it's for refinement and clarifying your vision and your just like the technical details about your garment, which are very important for fit, construction, all of that. Lastly, cost awareness early prevents mistakes and saves time. So don't wait until you get the samples and you're making comments and you still don't have the price. You want to get the price right when you send your tech pack and your sketch so you know how much the garment's going to cost and there are no surprises later. If you found this video helpful and you want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into tech packs, check out my video, Creating a Garment Tech Pack, and let me know what you want me to talk about in the future by putting it in the comments. Thanks.